Okay, I'm ready. Welcome in, golfers and golf fans. It's Hot Golf episode 18, if you can believe that. Greetings and welcome to the number one tee box on our 18th edition, the 18th hole, if you will. About to flip it and go another 18 holes, as that's what we do here on Hot Golf. Hopefully you know by now as a loyal viewer and sharing it with your friends. Hot Golf stands for Heart of Texas, and that is our focus. Golf in the 512 and about the 100-mile radius beyond, the ongoing 19th hole golf chat, covering the latest happenings right around here in the great state, which included the PGA Tour about 70 miles south in San Antonio this past weekend. Our show emanates from our home base here in Austin. I am your number one tee box host, as usual, Erin Hogan, host of Game Time each weekday morning from 6 to 11 on 1027 ESPN. That's where you'll find our podcast housed there on our website at 1027ESPN.com and, of course, our 1027 ESPN YouTube page. As always, my playing partners this week and every week. He's an avid golfer of more than 50 years. The CEO and man in charge over there at the historic Callahan's General Store, nearly 50 years, an Austin legend itself, a staple of Austin in Southeast Austin, still family-owned and operated. He is Charley Wilson, and our third member brings 3 decades of on-the-ground knowledge of the Austin golf scene as a PGA Club professional, head of golf operations at the City of Austin Golf. He is our man, Steve Hammond. Guys, welcome in and happy Masters Week.
Happy Masters Week. Of course, I have my green on. Recovering from a wonderful Easter weekend that was loaded with golf between the Texas Open, the Women's ANWA, the Augusta National Women's Amateur, NCAA Finals Women, NCAA Finals Men, the Junior Drive Chip Putt. It's just a fantastic weekend. I watched more TV this weekend than I have in 6 months.
Charlie, do you think that this past weekend and now into Masters Week, I know we've had the Players Championship and some fun tournaments, the Texas Swing, but you think for a lot of golfers this is the kind of the launch of the golf season in earnest?
Oh, absolutely. And yes, Steve, along with you, I got my Masters green going here, and then a little bit of a commemorative hat. I did put my order in actually for some swags. We'll see if it came back, if it's going to come back this week from the various points of contact throughout who are there this week and last weekend. But yeah, Erin, to answer your question, this is the prime part of the launch of the golf season, whether it's professional, amateur, collegiate. This is where the trend is really picking up, and we're going to see a lot of good, healthy competition, spicy competition here in the coming weeks. I think we're in store for a good run of and a good fill of golf.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all, and I think it's going to be phenomenal. And it's funny, a couple stories. Hopefully, maybe even next week on episode 19, my friend Colonel Craig Flowers is retired colonel. He's going to the Masters for the first time this weekend as a guest of Cam Smith, or Cam Young, I should say, Cameron Young. Cameron Young's wife is a fellow colonel, retired colonel as well. So Colonel has been invited along with to follow Cam, who is one of the storylines. Plus, how about this little cool story? Here's a picture. You guys probably can't see it, but that is my niece. She is Maya. She goes to South Carolina University of, and she's there for class. She's in a marketing class, and they get to work the tournament for the week, which is really, really cool. So she is sending updates and pictures, and of course, I can't take cameras onto the course, but she's sending us the updates of what's going on. And she said I was able to meet and see Ashke Batia, Keegan Bradley, Wyndham Clark, Tommy Fleetwood. She went on and on about roaming the course. She's working Amen's Corner. Amen Corner. She's there 10 to 13. So cool eyewitness stories coming. I know everybody's got theirs about the Masters. We've got the storylines to get to here on our episode of the Hot Golf Podcast, and so pretty cool there. But Charlie, start with as Steve mentioned, the events at Augusta National this past weekend. Then we get to the Texas Open. But we've got had some local flavor there at Augusta on the Women's Am and the drive, chip, and putt contest. And you've got the numbers. We have a winner out of the Austin division, correct?
Yeah, we do. So we'll take it in reverse order as far as the events went this last weekend in Augusta. Sunday, the drive, chip, and putt competition, the national finals was held. And as we've promoted here, as well as on our weekly radio show on 102.7 ESPN, we've had 3 representatives from the Austin area in the 12 and 13 boys division alone. And ironically, all of those representatives went off to different regions to qualify for the drive, chip, and putt national competition. We had Dawson Dial, who was representing this region of the country. Dawson was the defending champion from 11U a year ago. We had Texas Terry. We also had him as well. And then we had one other young man whose name escapes me at the moment. I think his name was Jackson Osborne. Yeah, he represented another region of the country. And so turns out this year was a repeat of 2 years ago in 2024 when Texas Terry won that boys division of 10 and 11. This year, 12 and 13, Texas Terry got out there and won that division and brought home the big trophy here to Austin, or will be bringing home the big trophy to Austin. If he's like a lot of these kids who are there, last year they had a rain out for their practice round that they were supposed to see at Augusta National after their event. And so the kids were offered an opportunity to get another ticket if you were competing a year ago. So I know Dawson Dial and his family were able to get an extra rounds ticket. So they saw practice round, and they'll see Wednesday's practice round and par 3 competition. So more than likely, if I'm the Terry family, I'm probably figuring out how to stick around for another day or two. And Texas will bring back that trophy sometime this week and share it with his rest of his family and friends and the golf community. You know, Texas is part of, and Dawson both played together and were part of that PGA Junior National Team competition that was up in Frisco, Texas in the fall. So they're very accustomed to seeing each other, and they're friends. And I think everyone's happy for Texas. We certainly are, and should be proud. And all of the boys from Austin. There might have been a couple others in the girls groups, and again, I don't have all the names available, but for anybody who made it there, it's a feat in and of itself. And so that was held Sunday. It was on the Golf Channel. Got up at 7 a.m. To start watching it. And, you know, for those of us who are obligated, and yes, we had to cut out and catch a little mass time for Easter Sunday, and then came back and saw what was left of the deal. It was just a wonderful deal. And I feel for after seeing last year Dawson Dial win that age division, and this year he didn't perform as well, but you got to understand how hard it truly is, because they're gauged on 5 shots. That 5 shots are important to win that competition. It is, you get to hit 2 drives. Yes, the best drive is selected. You get to hit 2 chips, and both chips count. And then you get to hit 2 putts, and both putts count. So as far as the distance away from the hole, if you don't knock it in. If you were watching some of the other competitions, there was this girls division. I think it was the 8 and 9, or it might have been the 10 and 11 girls. And these 2 girls got into a putt off against each other, sudden death. And they were draining these 15-footers over and over and over again. I mean, I was yelling and screaming about how clutch these kids were. They were ice cold, these girls, just drilling those putts. And, you know, it just brought joy to my heart that this is what we talk about in developing the game of golf and promoting the development and the growth of the game of golf. This is exactly it. And yeah, 5, 6 shots doesn't make you the best golfer on the planet by any means, but in that competition, you certainly are. And in that competition at Augusta National, you certainly are. Then we roll back the calendar a little bit earlier in the week, because it was the Augusta National Women's Amateur being played, and they played 2 rounds the first 2 rounds at a local country club there, and then after the second round, there's a cut. So the top 30 players get to make the third round. Now the third round is delayed until Friday, so they finished Wednesday the first 2 rounds, and then on Thursday they all go over to Augusta National and play a practice round. And then on Friday, the top 30 who made the cut get to continue competitively at Augusta National. And Farrah O'Keefe, a guest of ours here a couple of weeks ago on Hot Golf, she had qualified for the tournament along with 2 other University of Texas players, women's players, And Farah made the finals and ended up finishing 15th overall in that tournament. So in the 3 years that she has qualified for that tournament, each of the years she qualified to play her final round at Augusta National. She's finished 20th, she's finished 10th, and now she's finished 15th there. She's one of the top amateur golfers in the world right here. Austin Anderson, University of Texas Longhorn, Farah O'Keefe. So we're real proud of her too.
That whole event was a great event. I watched quite a bit of the ANWA. The young lady that was leading, her name's Asterix Talley. She was in the lead going into the final round, 17 years old, third trip to ANWA. Unfortunately, she got Jordan Spieth there on 12th hole and rinsed 2 balls there. She put another one in the water on 16. A heartbreaking collapse for her. But at 17 years old, she has a really bright future ahead of her. It was a great event. But once Maria Jose Marin got moving to win that event, there was no stopping her. There were several 4-unders that were posted on the last day. Matter of fact, I think the top 5 players posted 4-under on the final day at Augusta National. But she got out ahead of them and then kept putting the pressure on. I think she shot 14-under for the event. It's so much fun to watch them play. But I cannot figure out for the life of me, because I've never seen it, why that little 148-yard hole number 12 is so difficult. And it's because the green is the size of the bed of my truck, probably.
Yeah. Well, that's probably one reason why.
And the wind's whipping around, and you never know how it's going to gust. And you gotta land. You're trying to beat pin pipe, because you go too deep, then you're in the azaleas. If you're that 17-year-old young lady who rinsed it, as you say, a couple times. Well, we've seen some of the best players in the world, do the exact same. Is that tournament, Steve-O and Charlie, is that probably the most prestigious amateur women's tournament these days? I mean, the most prestigious?
I would say it's going to 100% be the most prestigious invite. It probably has the best field, because it has 60 of the top amateur women in the country. It is. I saw a number. I think 16 or 17 Stanford golfers had gone through the ANWA since 2019. That is an incredible number for one collegiate program.
Yeah,
that's right. And,
I agree with you, Steve. I think, and Erin, I think it probably is the most prestigious invite. And what encourages it is the universities, they pretty much create space for all of by not scheduling any competitions during that period of time on the women's side. So you have a window of opportunity there where the schedule's open. If you qualified in, you'll get in, you can get over there and play, and you're not going to hurt your team as it's preparing for its conference tournament or its NCAA regional or whatever it might be. So I think you earn your way in to other tournaments that might be a bit more prestigious, like the, women's U.S. Amateur or the women's U.S. Open, because of the qualification process, and maybe the, women's British Open or women's Open and women's amateur over on that side of the pond. You could argue that those amateur championships might be a little more prestigious because they've been around longer. But I'm telling you, and I would be willing to bet that any of the women who get invited to that ANWA, the Augusta National Women's Amateur, that's the invite they want. They know that if they get that invite, and there's quite an international field. There's players from Hong Kong, China, Taiwan, Singapore, Canada, Europe, Northern Ireland. It's an international field. Mostly younger players. There's junior players, anybody ranging from age 14, 15 up this year. And there are some players who've already had their college, eligibility completed, and yet they're still playing amateur golf, and they want those invitations. That haven't turned pro, they still want those invitations to the ANWA. So, Steve-O, you're dead on. This has got to be probably in women's golf the most prestigious invitation tournament to go to.
Good for Augusta for doing that and creating that type of. And as you said, the calendar's perfect. Especially for the college golfers. They're right in the middle of their peak season, but they can take some time off to get ready for their conference championships. But really when they're playing their best golf. And I know, having talked to Farrah a couple of weeks ago, Farrah O'Keefe, she's not going to be happy with 15th. I mean, she was talking about building on her 10th place in year 2, and that's just the way golf goes. We look forward to talking to her about that. I'm sure it was a thrill for her, but she was talking about felt like she was really, really ready to improve on a 10th place finish. But that's that course, that's the pressure of that challenge. And the great field, and you mentioned her, Steve. It's for all our viewers to watch Maria Jose Marin, a Brazilian prodigy. She's one of those, and she finished 14 under par in that event. She plays at College Golf at Arkansas, I believe. She's one to watch.
Razorback. She's a Razorback, and I think she's from Colombia.
Colombia? Okay. You said she's something else, man. Some kind of player. Beautiful golf swing, and the word prodigy gets thrown around with her, which is pretty impressive. And to finish in that field at 14 under and that much ahead, that's somebody to keep an eye on for the future of ladies golf, no doubt about it. And congratulations to Texas Terry. I'm assuming, having talked to John Fields and Coach Iannella, he's got to go to Texas, right? It's on when he plays. Come on, man.
Be a big miss if he went anywhere else.
Well, I guess he could go to A&M or Texas Tech. It's in his name, but wherever he chooses. What a name, what a player. And out of Maynard, Texas, right? I think we learned he played out of Shadow Glen.
He does. And he did throw up the hook'em whenever he was hoisting the trophy. So I think he has somewhere in mind. If they'll just take him.
Gotta think that makes sense. And John Fields, I'm sure, is taking note over there. But congratulations to all those young people for what they went through and how they performed. And we'll get into our golf storylines. I want you guys to give me your favorite storylines headed in. Rory is a defending champ, as we record episode 18 on this Tuesday. He'll be having the Champions Dinner tonight and hosting that. And no Tiger, no Phil for the first time. The first time since 1994, guys, that one of those all-time greats have not been there. Both of them won't be at Augusta this week, which is crazy. 1994, I think Bernard Longer was the defending champ. Greg Norman was the world number 1 the last time. This week did not include either Phil Mickelson or Tiger Woods or both, which is crazy. And so we'll get into some of the storylines. But guys, the Texas Open just wrapped up over the weekend. The Texas Swing. They'll come back into the Metroplex after the Augusta and Hilton Head. They'll be back for the Byron Nelson and the Colonial later in the calendar. But what'd you take from that? I mean, the weather. We know weather can be friend or foe on the golf course. And those guys down in San Antonio, great field. J.J. Spawn with a gritty Sunday comeback win in kind of cold, windy conditions. But that was a tough course, and it felt like every round was played under very different weather conditions. And J.J. Spawn, your winner, looked like it was going to be Robert McIntyre going into Sunday, but J.J. Spawn, his first win of the calendar year.
It's always a great win for any win out there is a great win. It was a wonderful win for JJ. He played incredibly well on the final day. I just like Ludwig. I love the way he plays. I watched that collapse stroke by stroke and hated to see it. He started off hot, and then he kind of played himself out of it. Basically, closing out the front 9. He closed out the front 9 with 2 bogeys, and then had another bogey on 12, and finished the day with 3 birdies in the last 5 holes. Always rooting for him, but he finished down the leaderboard. But JJ is such a good player. I don't know how well it translates coming into Augusta National. I'm not certain what his record is, but the golf course doesn't particularly favor a left to right shot. It's been done. It's been done several times with Phil Mickelson or Lee Trevino or Craig Stadler. But he hits that low bullet going left to right. And does he have the hot hand right now? Maybe. We'll see how it shakes out. But I just thought it was a great tournament in absolutely miserable conditions. Once again, the weather affected the Texas Open. Imagine that.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that. And ironically, we're sitting here in Austin in our living rooms or wherever we're watching that, and it wasn't raining here, but just 70 miles south, they just, for whatever reason, that weather pattern just stuck right over the top of them. And they got unlucky with that. I found it it was almost like deja vu a little bit with JJ Spawn, the way that he, hung in there and finally put it together on, kind of stuck it together on the back 9 to, reminiscent of what he did last year at the US Open. Because he was just kind of hanging, and then boom, boom, he put a couple of really strong holes together while everybody else was kind of fledgling. And, it was really cool to see him come out of what some people were concerned about of a slump. He had missed 4 of 7 cuts, and he was falling off of some people's radars. And so I think now you got to put him back into the consideration set, considering it looks like he got rid of some of his boogaboos, if you will, on the putting surface, and he was rolling the putts really well this last weekend.
He also played the last 5 holes in 4 under. He won by 1. Played the last 5 holes at 4 under with a bogey mixed into those 5 holes. He made and a par on a par 5. He made a deuce on a 17, the par 4 number 17. So
right, he
earned the hell out of that victory, and that's awesome. And the guy is just I just love his game. Root for him. And y'all remember going into the Ryder Cup how much I liked him on our team. Didn't have a great Ryder Cup, but still, what he did last year in the U.S. Open, I think that guy holds up under pressure. He just has to bring his best stuff every time he plays, because he may not have the natural talent that some of those other players have.
Yeah, and you said it, both y'all, but certainly Charlie, the bad weather player, man. Weather doesn't affect that guy. He doesn't care about wet greens and soggy and cold. He just, but I think, that's interesting, Steve. As you said, he doesn't have the overall talent of some of those guys. But, when the weather kind of brings everybody back to the pack, he can stand out a little bit. And I thought he did, and certainly did at the U.S. Open. And fun to watch down there in San Antonio with those gusty winds and the rain. You mentioned Ludwig Oberg, and I think that's where we'll start our Masters conversations and just storylines, because it's that week. It's, the 90th tournament. And you mentioned Ludwig, and I think there's 3 or 4 guys who have never won a major that I think we have to put into this conversation. We'll get to Scotty Scheffler, and obviously Rory is the defending champ coming back. He and Colin Morikawa battling the bad back kind of thing. But the golfers who have never won one, who have to be considered top players seeking their first major, would have to include Ludwig Oberg, Cameron Young, who I mentioned a minute ago, who won the Players' Championship in such impressive fashion, Tommy Fleetwood, Fleetwood has been incredible through the Ryder Cup, and the end of last year won the FedEx Cup. He's got to be in this conversation. Is there anybody else you would add to that, guys, that have never won a major but might be poised? And Oberg's got to handle his Sunday issues. Cam Young has shown the poise and the ability. Tommy Fleetwood, maybe Chris Gotterup would be one to mention. What do you guys think about players who have never won one contending this week in Augusta?
Robert McIntyre is playing good golf right now. Terrell Hatton, I like Terrell Hatton's game for that golf course. The Ludwig conversation, I'm afraid he has the gremlins right now. Over the last month, being right there on the edge of it and not being able to finish it out. I don't know if he's going to punch through the ceiling at the premier event on the calendar, but it's a great looking field. But I'm telling you right now, if you don't have Patrick Reed on your radar, he's weaseled his way up to 23rd in the world rankings by not even playing on the PGA Tour. I think that guy is poised to win this one this year at Augusta National.
Wow. Well, Charlie, he's a 2018 champ. He's won a couple times on the DP World Tour since leaving Live. He's from Augusta, Georgia, right? He went to Augusta College there. What do you think about old Patrick Reed? A lot of kind of a villain for a lot of people, but playing some great golf right now and loves that course.
I'm singing in Steve's choir today, man, because I agree. I think he's the guy who in this year, the way things are shaping up, with how people are playing and playing on the courses that are somewhat similar, or have the games that match somewhat similar to what Augusta demands of you, Patrick Reed is in my top 4. And he's got just enough of a nastiness to him. He's got a little bit of wanting to stick it to you in him. And he doesn't care if you don't like him. And that's really shaping up, because the sentimental favorites aren't really showing us a whole lot right now with the Scotty Schefflers. He's got some, he went the birth of a child, and that just changes the way things happen on the golf course for you. Your focus of attention, your fatigue, your energy, whatever it might be, is different. And then Rory, Rory could surprise us this year in that now that he's got it, he might have I don't care approach, and he might just kill it out there. And walk away with a big smile like, I got this. So I think Rory's probably got to be in that top 4 conversation still. But the field, I think the field is pretty open. And like Chris Gotterup having some success early in the season, and maybe he's been doing some things that are trying to help him get ready for Augusta. But I mean, the only person I can recall, and it might still be the only one who ever won Augusta in their first try, was Fuzzy Zeller. And so, that's a challenge to win in Augusta in your first try. We're not even talking about Colin Markoff, but we'll talk about some of the other guys who are out there that could pose a problem out there. And I think the field's wide open. I do like Cameron Young's game for this. He hits it high. He hits it far. I tell you who he reminds me of, if you guys remember this, when he was in his heyday. And granted, Cameron Young hit it with a high draw. Nicholas hit it with a high fade. And so, Steve, he was a fader who wanted Augusta. And yet he also knew when to turn it and make it go left. But he was a fader. But the big thing was he was a long, high ball hitter. And that helps you approach those greens and get yourself in a position to make those putts. So if Cameron Young's got the flat stick going, man, I say look out for him. I think he could go straight from winning, the TPC Players Championship to winning the Masters also.
Yeah, and the golf course, the greens, they keep them so firm now, and it's so long for these players now. They have to be able to hold a 6-iron. They can't bring it in from low. It has to come in from well up in the air. You mentioned Colin Morikawa. I'd be surprised if he even plays 36 holes. He twisted his back on a practice swing a couple weeks back, and he, it was a question mark on whether or not he was even going to make it. But you and I are in a class of 2 when we talk about Patrick Reed. The odds makers have him going off at 40-1.
I'm taking that.
Yeah, I'm taking that all day if I had money to light on fire.
Yeah.
And Scotty is been off for 3 weeks, and they still won't bet against him. He's 4-1.
Yeah, well, and one's been playing and one's been playing well, and we'll get to Scotty. But y'all's point about the wide open field and the sports books, Scotty Scheffler is the favorite, but plus 500, plus 450 to 500, as you said, 4 or 5 to 1 is where Scotty is. John Rahm is at plus 8 to 1. If you're doing plus 1,000, there's only 3 inside, 2 digit or 3 digits with Rahm, Scotty, and then Bryson DeChambeau. Then you got Oberg, Rory, Xander Schauffele, all about 1,000 or more, between 1,000 and 1,500, so 10 or 15 to 1. That's kind of crazy with Scotty Scheffler. What do we make of Scotty? The number that stands out to me, Steve-O, we know he got off to a great start with the American Express, but then the rough Thursday rounds in Phoenix and out there in California, where he played great Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but not Thursday. Now he's had a baby. We hadn't played in a month. And he's ranked 80th, Steve, on strokes gained on those approaches, which he's led the world in that category, coming into the greens with the iron play and sticking it stiff for 3 years now on this incredible run. And this year he's 80th, and that makes you mortal. You're not in and around the pin all the time putting for birdie. You're scrambling at times, which leads to a couple of strokes here and there. And that's where Scotty is right now. It wouldn't surprise anybody if he finds it and has a heck of a weekend. But at the same time, his numbers, but back up what your eyeballs have told you so far this year. He's just not playing as crisply as we've seen him.
Yeah, his distance control is always going to be great, but at the same time, he's not incredibly accurate right now. So he may be chipping from pin high more than he's putting from pin high. Coming off of the teeing ground out there, there's not that much of a premium to put it in the fairway at Augusta National, but at the same time, those pine trees make it look like a hallway. Half the time, it looks like they're growing together, especially on that tee ball on number 11. Would you count him out? Absolutely not. But there's not a whole lot of conversation around that place with him. I don't understand how. I guess you don't bet against him, but I have a hard time having him at plus 400 when the next best guy is like plus 1,300. Rory's plus 1,300. I have a hard time seeing him as a better than a 2-time favorite over Rory McIlroy and the rest of the field.
Yeah, double the favorite. Hey, Charley, go ahead, Charley. What about Scotty?
Yeah, I think that Scotty will be prepared in so much as that even with the birth of his child, I'm sure that he's somewhere hitting the shots that are required to be hit in his round at Augusta. So from the standpoint of practice, I think he's probably going to be prepared. I think the one thing you can't simulate and truly practice is kind of the competitive juices that he could have gotten a taste of and worked on those sometime in the last 3 weeks. So you can't replicate that when you're out there simulating the shots. It's just not going to happen. So he's going to have to do it with his short game, and he's probably going to have to do it with the flat stick in order to separate himself from the field and be in the hunt. Otherwise, the guy that's really at the top tier of the game right now that you have to look out for, which is probably my fourth guy, is Bryson DeChambeau.
Yeah, we need to talk about him. That's good.
Yeah, and I was going to ask both of you guys about Bryson. People will forget that he was in the final pairing last year, playing alongside Rory and shot 75. But he was right there, and it was going to be he and Rory back and forth. And he wasn't particularly relevant on the back nine because of that rough stretch. But that's his second straight top 6 at Augusta, guys. He's kind of finally figured out the iconic layout that what do you call it, a par 67 the one time, and he was at least in the mix. He's won back-to-back good starts, and he's coming off a playoff win over John Rahm. I think you'd have to be considering his competitive fire that Bryson DeChambeau has to be a guy you're keeping an eye on teeing off Thursday, Scott. Steve-O.
Yeah, live or not, Bryson is one of the top players in the country, and he's going to be longer than anybody else that he plays with. If he keeps it in play off the teeing ground, he would, without a doubt, he's going to be up there near the top of the leaderboard. And Charlie, you were talking about envisioning shots in your mind and so on and so. You have to have this imagination around those greens that you really don't have anywhere else because of the movement in the greens and where they're able to put the flag sticks. If you're not missing it on the right side, you may be playing away from the hole, hoping that it gets back down, in and around the hole in your short game.
Yeah, it's
Charlie.
It is a crazy place on the greens there. It is so beautiful, and it is but you get up there close to the greens and you start to look at where some of the pins are, and they're there. That they're traditionally always there. They don't switch it up much over the course of 4 rounds. You're going to get a back right pin on 18. You're going to get a front left pin on 18. You're going to get and you're going to get a front right pin on it. You just you know what you're going to get. And same thing on 16. But that said, getting to those suckers is another story. And if you don't get to your spots, you're hitting putts that you wouldn't even imagine on a putt golf course. It's that nuts. So clown's mouth, and swinging, axes or whatever it might be, you won't even see those, but you might as well with some of those putts and how much they curve.
I've never been invited to play there, but I think about that middle left pin on 11.
Yeah.
And I just think I can't approach that green. I have no shot of making better than a 7 on that hole because I hit a smother hook and I'm going to be hitting 4-iron into that green. But I can't, that right there just gives me the heebie-jeebies thinking about approaching hole 11.
The bailout is to the right, and then so if you bail out to the right, you got to come over a hump, and the hump takes you right down to the pond,
right down to the water. It's just write me down for an 8. I don't want to play 11. I'll go to 12.
And 12, we just talked about that with the ladies. I mean,
can't be that hard.
diabolical to go to 12. Amen corner right there. Hey, what about John Rahm, the Spaniard? He won in 2023 and then defected to live and really hasn't been a factor since. Can John Rahm, he's got the game for it. He loves this course. He's a previous champion, all the things you're looking for. Can we put John Rahm in the conversation?
You don't leave him out of the conversation, but what do we even know about him right now? All we're looking at is his finishes. We're not watching him play golf, and we're watching him beat up on dozens of good players. But you know, I don't know how many great players he's beating right now. You can't leave him out. You know, it wouldn't be a surprise, but at the same time, I just soon he not.
Yeah. I mean, he's the last two live events, he went toe to toe with DeChambeau. You know, they went down to, you know, they went sudden death one time, and I think it got down to the 18th hole another. So those two guys have been squaring off, and their games are in, you know, major championship form and pointing toward Augusta. I think you're right in that you can't get a handle on what to expect from him, and it's hard to like get on his bandwagon because he you know, he will just catch fire and then he'll go cold in a round, and it's just hard to I have a hard time getting on his bandwagon. And then kind of and maybe this is just a bias from the standpoint of, you know, when he left the PGA Tour and went to Live Tour, you know, it was very similar kind of, okay, I'm supportive of the tour, and then boom, he was gone, and everyone could just say, you know, he says, well, how can you pass up that money? And granted, I get it. That is a fair question. How can you pass up that money? But then, you know, he comes out of it kind of in a, and I don't know if the media sets him up this way, Aaron, you know, and how they capture his sound bites and what he says. And maybe he has a lot more context to what he says, but the sound bites don't ever paint a really good picture of him as well. When he talks about, you know, about the money, or he talks about, you know, how competitive it is on the Live Tour, yet we're playing 54 holes. And then, you know, we should or we shouldn't play 72 holes. He's just kind of all over the map, the way it sounds to me. It's just hard to get on his wagon.
I've never been dealt with $50 million decisions, so I have a hard time saying, yes, I would have stayed or I would have gone. But we've had the Live conversation. That is what they chose to do. They knew the ramifications when they did it.
Yeah, and you wonder with John Rahm, he's such an emotional guy, the Spaniard that he is. It's almost like he's happy to have the money in the bank account, Steve-O, but I do think there's some regret. This is my amateur psychologist. There is some regret to it that, you know, because it shows up in his game.
He wants to be liked.
Yes.
I believe he wants to be liked, and he's not going to be liked playing on the Live Tour.
That's a good point. Very, very good point. You know, and I don't mean this. I don't mean this in a broad brush comparative way, but it's somewhat similar to what Sergio Garcia has gone through. And you know, I remember when Sergio came out on the tour, I saw him at the Byron Nelson in, I don't know, 96, 97 or something or another. And God, he was so talented. He was 17, 18 years old, and he had so much game and he had so much spunk to him. It was impossible not to love this guy. I mean, he was the kid, you know, and then he came out and challenged Tiger and you know, all those things. And but then, you know, there were some things that would flare up. It's like, oh, why did that happen? You know, and granted, it's in the emotion of competition and in the emotion of maybe stringing together, you know, several good weeks versus several mediocre weeks. And they'll go through it, but you just, and maybe we're just trying to look at it through the lens of an American golf fan versus the lens of, you know, a European golf fan or a Spanish sports fan or whatever it might be. But I think you see some similarities, and again, that's not totally fair just because they're from Spain. They're individuals, and they got their own things, and they got their own motivations and whatnot. But
yeah, well, I mean, and you know, their emotions, we see that a lot. They're colorful. Their emotions run deep.
Oh,
And I do
they're
agree with
beautiful
them both.
golfers,
They're
man.
like
Beautiful players.
beautiful golf players. And I would also say that to the you called it spunk. I think the young people these days call it swag. Charlie, call it swag. It's swag. He had the swag. Okay, a couple other people. What about Brooks Koepka? Did we put him in this? I mean, Brooks, major Brooks with the 5 majors, but he's been back playing competitive golf. He's one of those guys that he'll not be really on your radar, and then the next thing you know, he's in contention on the weekend. I think we have to put Brooks Koepka in the conversation just in wait and see here.
It is a major championship, and I'm not in the mind of Brooks Koepka, but you have to wonder if he's interested sometimes whenever he's playing in non-majors, and it gives him a little shot, a little jolt for him to play in these majors. And so, do you put him in? I mean, he's going off at like 40-1 as well, but it is a major championship, and this guy shows up. He's like Robert Horry, big shot Bob, and then when it's game time, boom. So I like him, but depends on if he's motivated.
Yeah, he's got a lot of money.
I think that's a very interesting and fascinating consideration for the Masters this year, given that where the people who you would normally consider to be at the top, you're maybe not sold on the Rorys and Schefflers, and maybe you might even say we're not completely sold on Bryson or John Rahm, and that there's a person in the field that's a lurker. Brooks Koepka might be that lurker.
And you think about these tour players, and you take a Koepka and a Rory and a Scotty, even a Jordan, their ability is 5 times what JJ Spawn has. It literally is. They can do every shot over and over again. It's what holds up under pressure and where their mindset is. The top guys are so much better than the guys who are 60th and below. They're just that much better from their ability standpoint. It's not because they work harder. Maybe it is. But it's not because they work harder or whatever. It's just they've got it. They're artists of the game, and they're just so much better. One we're not talking about is Justin Rose. I don't know how he hasn't got into the conversation today. 40 minutes in.
He makes things interesting.
The guy's hungry. He's got a lot of seconds at that place. I think 3 of them, and he was really close last year. I don't count that guy out. He's such a great player and so much fun to watch, and just a gentleman, and I love that guy.
Yeah. Agreed. He was in his 40s now. Okay, so here I uncovered this statistic, guys, and I know you see a lot of these at this point, but so there's a 5 for 5 metric that I found. That's each of the last 10 Masters winners were top 10 in the top 25 world golf rankings entering. So top 10, each of the last 10. Each of the last 10 Masters winners were between the ages of 27 and 43. Each of the last 10 had a top 13 finish in at least one of the previous 2 majors. So top 13. Each of the last 10 winners had a top 10 finish in the last 50 days. And each of the last 10 Masters winners have a top 34 finish at Augusta in the prior 2 years. So that's how they whittled it down. There are 6 names in that hit 5 for 5. We've already talked about 5 of them. Scotty Scheffler, Cameron Young. Actually, there's 2 we missed. There's Scotty Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, Cameron Young, Bryson DeChambeau, and the other 2 that hit that 6 list, 5 for 5, Xander Schauffele and Matthew Fitzpatrick.
Huh.
Okay. And we didn't mention
those 2 guys, Xander and Matthew. Matthew was in contention at the Players with Cam Young, and Cam just bulldozed him on 17 and 18, but he was right there. What do we make of those 2 guys?
Xander, kind of a coin flip on what's going to show up. Absolutely a generational talent. Cameron Young, Charley already talked about him earlier, but with that high ball, it's good stuff, man. This is going to be such a great Masters. I'm fired up already.
So, and Fitzpatrick won the week after losing at TPC. So, the guy's game is there.
Yeah, I think Fitzpatrick's a kind of a sleeper And we didn't talk much about Tommy Fleetwood. I mean, this guy finally got a PGA Tour win last year, won the FedEx Cup, dominated the Ryder Cup. Could he be a guy to put in your group? I mean, I really like where Tommy's. I don't know where his game is. Currently, I'm looking at him right now on the Golf Channel right there. I put Tommy Fleetwood in your picks, right?
Does Tommy have a major yet?
No.
He doesn't. Okay. For one reason, I thought he won the Open at some point in time. But
no, the guys who have not won a major, I'll put out there are Fleetwood, Cameron Young, Oberg. What about Hideki Matsuyama's won this? He's in this.
Yeah.
Well, we've gone through
where his game is right now.
20 names today, and my daughter sent me her pick sheet the other day, and I'm like, man, I don't even know. There is just so many people that I just look on here. I don't even know. It's all a guessing game. That's why it's gambling. But
I'll enjoy it. What about I find it amazing.
Yeah, and like we said a little bit earlier, I think the field.
Go ahead, Charlie. I was going to say, I find it amazing. We sit here and we're 5 minutes into this, and we have not talked about Jordan Spieth.
Yeah,
I think I put Jordan Spieth in the same conversation as Hideki Matsuyama. I think those guys are capable, but I don't think they've shown fairly recently that they can string 4 rounds together.
I don't think Jordan makes the cut.
Interesting. He's really in a bad place right now with his golf game, and that's unfortunate. This felt like when we saw him in the first couple of years and winning the green jacket, you thought this guy's going to win 3, 4, 5 of these things, and maybe he will. But right now, the game's not there. So, I know Steve-O, because you got a hard out here coming up. But I know you heard the Jim Nantz interview. People should know out there on our hot golf conversation. This is the 2026 will be Jim Nantz's 40th Masters as the play-by-play voice, the Hello Friends. And his first, Charlie, was the Jack Nicklaus 1986, where he had the incredible back nine, the 65, to chase down Tom Kite and Greg Norman. His first. And you heard an interview with him this week on a podcast, Steve, with Jim Nantz. And what a legend. Now here he is 40 years later. What were your takeaways from that conversation?
Oh, man, he was talking on 5 Clubs with Gary Williams. And he talked about being in the tower on 16, and he asked Tom Weiskopf, what's Jack thinking here? He's 26 years old, Jim Nantz is. What's Jack thinking here? Weiskopf goes, Jim, if I knew what Jack Nicklaus was thinking, I'd have won 3 or 4 of these myself. But when he rolled in his putt on 16, he says, the bear has come out of hibernation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, because Jack Nicklaus was 46, but the funny thing is he immediately thought, oh my gosh, I've heard that line somewhere. I just plagiarized the line. And Frank Chirkanian told him what a great job he did. And he's like, no, I think I stepped on myself. I think I plagiarized the line. And Frank goes, no, man, that's all you. So that great line that we've heard from 16, along with, In Your Life from Vern Lundquist, that line was, he thought that he messed up and plagiarized the line. It was so great. And then he gets Ken Venturi afterwards, and Ken Venturi asked him, Jimmy, how old are you? And he says, I'm 26, sir. Ken Venturi goes, you may call 50 of these things. You will never see another day like this at Augusta National. And it just made me well up. Such a wonderful story. And to listen to Jim Nantz call it, it was fantastic.
Yeah, here he is at number 40. He might do 50 Masters in his day. And what a day. He did the Tiger in 2019, which was maybe a close second. There's been some incredible moments. Charlie, you're the veteran of the group here, the most seasoned of our panel. What is the story for you with no Phil, no Tiger? How big of an impact is that? For the casual golf fan, there'll be some, but here we are knee deep in 10, 15, 20 golfers we're talking about. How big of an issue or is there an issue at all with no Tiger, no Phil?
I think everybody understands, that you can't, nothing's forever. But it is to a certain generation of golf fans. It is, it seems like it's forever. It's Tiger and Phil in the Masters. And that's the triangulation that people of a certain generation relate to the Masters tournament. And the storylines coming from CBS and the Masters have always, for so long have been within that triangle. And so it's for the people who are nostalgic, I think we're going to miss that aspect of the Masters this year. There's no Tiger story of a potential comeback. There's no Phil story of can he put something magical together again. It kind of harkens back to as things were winding down for Palmer and Nicklaus. You know, that every year there was a generation of golf fans who looked forward to seeing if they had, you know, one last piece of that magic. You know, I look here at this. I'm so blessed to have this pin flag of the Masters where, you know, in a period of time, Arnold Palmer won the Masters in 50, 60, 62, and then Nicklaus won 63, Palmer won 64, Nicklaus won 65, 66. I mean, that really was the frame of what professional golf was in the nostalgia of professional golf. And then Nicklaus continued 72, 75, 86, you know, and then you have Watson come in and slips in a 77 and 81, you know, and you have Ben Crenshaw come in and he goes 84, 95. There's just so many little subplots that is part of the story of the Masters and that Tiger and Phil are part of, because you fast forward to 97 when Tiger, you know, finally when Tiger won his first Masters, and then Phil, oh man, that kicked him into gear. And I think there's a certain part of nostalgic sadness with not having them there this year. But at the same time, I think we all understand why, to the best that we can understand why. And you know what? We wish for them to get well and be well, and to see them again, to celebrate the Masters again next spring and many springs forward.
It's the only tournament on the calendar where it'll be okay that they're not there.
Yeah,
it's the only you know, it's the only tournament that we know every single hole on the golf course. We know where the flagstick's going to be. For one reason or another, it's the greatest 4 days in sports.
Agreed. You know, it might actually be good though. There's such a big presence and there's such a big conversation that it opens it up to some new conversation. There'll be some casual fans that are bummed that Tiger's not there, Phil, whatnot. But at the same time, there's great new young golfers coming that we've talked about, and obviously the storylines are 10, 12, 15 deep. All right, let's get our final picks on the board. I'm going to give you mine just so we, in the effort of expedience here to wrap things up. I know Steve's got to get going. I'm going to take Matthew Fitzpatrick, Cameron Young, and Bryson DeChambeau. Those are my pick threes. Those are my guys. Those are my top three. Steve-O?
Reed.
I already got that written down.
Yep. Reed, Rose,
Ooh.
And I just would really like to see Ludwig win it.
Okay. Got it. And then Charley O.
Okay. I'm going to go with Reed.
Ooh, you guys are singing from the same choir as you said.
I know. McIlroy and DeChambeau.
Yeah. And who?
And DeChambeau is my third.
Okay. Bryson DeChambeau.
Bunch of homers we are.
I know. But, you know,
Danny Willits, no Brent Snedekers. Come on.
no Sneedekers. No, not this time. Hey, I do have one other thing, Erin, I wanted to mention. I don't know if you saw this or not. Somebody was quoted here in the last week or so, or maybe it's been said before, but they were talking about the Masters as being the only event and location that anyone has ever gone to, and that is exactly where they wanted to be. That when their feet were there, that was the happiest place on earth for them in that moment and in that day. Not Disneyland.
Yeah.
I've done that.
Yeah.
Not anywhere else, but at the Masters. It's the only place in the world where the person who is standing there on those grounds, it's the happiest place in the world for them at that moment in time, maybe ever.
Yeah, agreed. Having not been, I need to get there. My 20-year-old niece is there this weekend, enjoying it for the first time, and she doesn't even understand. But that's what's awesome.
I will live vicariously through her. Yes.
Yeah. All right, guys. Awesome stuff. That is episode 18 of Hot Golf. Share it with your friends. Find it at our YouTube channel, 1027 ESPN. Charley will be a guest of tomorrow on our show, but obviously you're watching this after it's already happened. But every Wednesday, Charley joins me live on the radio at 9:10. And Steve-O is out there at one of the municipal courses all over Austin. Where do you normally hang out, Steve-O? Does it matter? Different day, different spot, or what?
I'm at Morris Williams today. I got a women's golf rules clinic about to start up. I'm going to teach our ladies group around here a little bit about the rule book.
Well, I apologize for not wearing my green. That's my faux pas. You guys did great, and enjoy the Masters, everybody. Coming off of the Texas Open. We've got a lot to talk about next week, and guests who are there and folks who are live in attendance, and we'll have a winner to talk about at the 90th playing of the Masters this week. And that's the Hot Golf Podcast. Rake your bunkers, fix and fill your divots there, Charley. And you guys have a great weekend. Enjoy it.
Yeah, have a great week.
So long, friends.